would be great. I'll give that about 5 seconds. Welcome back from lunch, everyone. And so it is my pleasure to dig right in to, excuse me, Indigenous Food Systems and Knowledge. We're so thrilled to be welcoming some great speakers here today to share about some of the food initiatives and what's happening in a couple of Mi'kmaq communities here in the province of New Brunswick, and also from a more national perspective that also ties into local food systems. And so first up, we are so pleased to welcome Nicole Porter from Fort Folley First Nation. Nicole is the Fort Folley First Nation Mi'kmaq cultural coordinator, and she works for Mi'kmaq Child and Family Services in New Brunswick. Nicole is also a licensed practical nurse, and she's a member of the Fort Folley community. She has 2 boys who love spending time on the land and in nature, and she has been working with lots of elders and knowledge keepers across Mi'kma'ki, learning her culture and bringing it to others in her community. She's focused now on traditional land-based learning with an emphasis on the medicine wheel to cover all aspects of a person's well-being by taking the two-eyed seeing approach. And two-eyed seeing approach, Western nursing approach, and her traditional Indigenous knowledge. So Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm happy to hand the mic over to you.
So Lalan, Gwe, Nidalawisan, Megaju Mestabeknajij, Niwigi Amalam Guk. In my language, I introduced myself as Grandmother Buffalo, or as most of you know, it's Nicole Porter, and I am from Amlamguk, which is Fort Folley First Nation, the area where the 2 rivers converge into the Bay of Fundy. So as cultural coordinator, taking on this role for my community, because we have lost a lot of our traditional teachings here in Fort Folley. So I wanted my children to know more about the culture. So that's what I took upon myself, is to learn. And then they seen that there was a need for me to teach what I've been learning to others in my community. They wanted to gather more, have more ceremonies, and get back to, being on the land and gathering our medicines, and, what the woods around us, the plants and the trees could provide for us, and get that knowledge back. So that's what I've been doing, is gathering a lot of the plant knowledge, the medicines, how to make these teas and salves to help with pain or whatever it may be, and teaching that. And when COVID hit, we were also, how can we get our food more sustainably? So that's where took on the initiative of improving our community garden that we started the year before COVID hit, and expand on that. And how could we preserve our food that we get from that garden? And with climate change, we were seeing a lot of power outages, especially in our area. And our community has always been the last to be hooked back up to power. We've gone a week, some winters, without power. So all the food, all of our moose, our salmon that we had in our freezer was being thrown out and spoiled. And so then we'd have to start all over again. So I was like, well, how can we preserve the food that we're using and gaining from our community garden? What else is out there to preserve that? So we partnered with Michelle Davidson. I believe she's on this call too. And we took some food preserving workshops with her, how to can, water bath can, and pressure canning. We made like salsas and how to do our cucumbers. And we taught that to the community members. And we've also now would get an extra moose for our community when the moose hunt happens. and we started bottling moose meat. So we have moose meat on stock in case anyone's freezer happens to go out. They still have those traditional foods available all the time for them. So that is something that we've done over COVID, and we continue to do now. And we expand on the community garden with that. We've also had 10 community boxes built for residents that would like to start taking the knowledge that they've gained and do a garden box at home. So we've got 10 of those that were handed out to community members. We will also be transplanting a lot of our herbs now that have overgrown in our boxes, and we will be giving them to community members as well too. So we're passing on those annual or perennial herbs and breaking them up into smaller ones so community members can have that. Here at Nagumi House, we also have started our monthly community suppers. So every month we have our youth here in community either preparing the meal or helping serve the meal. We deliver meals to the elders that can't make it out, especially. So they have one hot meal a month that is given to them, and it's been a really good turnout. A lot of the elders and everyone really appreciates the fact that we are providing them with a good, healthy, nutritional supper. And in the future, we would like to host more of those. It's just trying to find the time right now between all the work that we do here to maybe offer it as a bi-weekly supper. But we are still only a small community, about 45 people in community. So once a month is a good place to start with them. Any of our gatherings, of course, we always have food available for them. And the kids here at Nagumi House, we've started cooking classes for them. So whenever we get them here, there's always something that we're cooking and they're joining in. We have a dietitian that comes down. She works with them on healthy choices, making healthy snacks, and getting them eating a variety of food and the benefits of those food compared to like snacks and junk food for that. What else? In the spring, we are looking at maybe doing a food forest. So we're going to be getting, some fruit-bearing trees and getting them established in our community so that we'll start having that fresh fruit available for community members as they need. We do have already blueberry fields in our community. So we've purchased blueberry rakes, and the youth go out in August and they harvest blueberries. They clean them, they package them up, and they deliver them to elders in our community here. As well, other community residents are free to go and harvest those blueberries as they need them for their own benefit there. So that's always available to them to do that. Going forward, we are looking at doing more moose hunts and getting on the land. Fishing is another big one that we're teaching our kids as well too. So it's living off of the land. A few of our youth have actually learned how to go out and snare rabbits and process that rabbit meat. So going forward, we're getting back to those traditional foods that we've once consumed. And as a nurse, I'm taking those preventative nursing background that I have, to bring that in and make sure that they're getting like the physical fitness of being out and hiking the land, finding what is available just in our backyard here. So they're getting that physical fitness component. They're eating healthier, which when you're getting out and eating healthier, we all know the benefits that has on our overall health in general. So it's combining all of this knowledge from those two fields that I have now and bringing them together for the benefit of the community and everyone here. So that's what we've been doing here in Fort Folley, especially over COVID. We've definitely seen the benefits of that food security and realizing that our food just doesn't come from a grocery store. We can gather it ourselves and work together as a community and share this food that we've grown from our gardens and harvesting it. We're able to still share it with one another, because as Indigenous people, we've always done that. Our ancestors done that, is we are there for everybody and we help everyone to live sustainably and benefiting from what Mother Nature has given us. So I know that's like short and sweet. If anyone has any questions, I'll take some questions and try to answer them for you.
Yeah, Nicole, I know that so much is going on, and you in your role as cultural coordinator, I know that you do such a huge number of different activities and initiatives. Imelda Purley shared this morning, giving gratitude and thanking elders, thanking our ancestors. And I know that the first time that I met you, you shared a plate of food with the ancestors of an event that we were at to show some gratitude. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that practice.
Yeah, so it's called a spirit plate. And when we gather as First Nations people, we're always have our ancestors with us. So we offer that spirit plate to feed them as well too, symbolically, and give thanks for the food and for the knowledge that they've given us. And it's a little piece of everything that is at the table. And we offer a prayer to it, and then we take it outside and offer it to the ancestors. And you know, it could be a dog that comes up and eats it, or it could be a crow that comes and eats from it. And those are our ancestors. Those are our brothers and sisters that we're feeding them, and we're honoring them as well too.
I know we've been having some challenges with interpretation. Je sais que nous avons des enjeux avec l'interprétation. Alors, je veux juste offrir mon grand désolé pour ça. Nous travaillons avec les interprètes en ce moment. So we're working with interpreters to get them back on the line here to support translation. I want to again offer that space. Nicole is she's a very busy woman. She does a very large number of things in her community, and I know that she's got somewhere to be shortly after speaking. But I do see a question coming in. This is a curious question from Jerry Lasky. I hope I'm saying that right. Any progress on electrical power sustainability? So I suppose specifically in the community of Fort Folley.
So recently the chiefs talked about getting solar panels. So we are in the process right now of hooking up our major buildings here. So Nagumi House, we have another community center, the band office, our old bingo hall, which is now storage for our work vehicles, and our habitat will all get hooked up to solar panels. And in the future, we are looking at getting the infrastructure to get all of our houses hooked up to those panels as well too. So So it's a big move forward, especially for our small little community here.
Thanks, Nicole. And if there are no other questions coming up, s'il n'y a pas d'autres questions en ce moment, I have one more question for you. So the title of our conference is Loud About Food. And we're going from session to session thinking about what are the things that we need to get loud about. And so, Nicole, what do you want to get loud about?
I would like to, I know for sure seeing like the prices of food go down, not go up, because we all need food to survive. So if we do have to import our food, like not have that cost available, you know, we do have communities in remote areas, you know, especially in the north, that it's ridiculous amount of money just for food to survive, to be able to survive. So that would be one thing that I would want to be looked at for sure. You know, especially single moms and having teenage boys myself, like we all know kids love to eat, right? So so I see that as a big struggle as well too. And you know, the poverty level, especially amongst First Nations communities as well too, it is lower. So having more access to food in general, no matter where it comes from, but from growing it ourselves to being able to go out and harvest it from the woods, you know, having that access and freedom to be able to do that too.
Yeah, and in the community of Fort Folley, there is not a retail food location, a food outlet that would have all of the things that you would need, right? And so that travel, the transportation, all of these factors play a role for community members. Yeah. You know, those barriers are created. Mm-hmm.
Like we have a gas station here that has like our milk, bread, and eggs, but majority that's there is dry processed food. Very little of that fresh food available. So we do have to go to Moncton or Sackville to get that. Yeah. And I know with climate change coming, there's always roads around us too that flood. So we're always relying on, you know, if a big storm comes, okay, what's going to be out, what's going to be flooded. So we do have that worry here in community going forward about those rising sea levels and those floods that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up, Nicole. And tomorrow morning, the first session of our day is around food and climate, but with everything happening across our country right now, we know that many folks over in British Columbia at this moment are experiencing just that. And so thanks for putting a point on that one too, Nicole. It's been so great to host you. Thank you for joining. And unless there are any other questions in the chat, I don't see any at the moment, but Nicole will let you get on with all the amazing things that you're doing in your community and outside of it too.
Okay. Well, Shalyn, and good luck with the rest of the day.
Shalyn, bye for now.
Multus.
I'm muted. Again, I'll give my apologies. Je vais donner mes... je vais dire un gros désolé pour le manque d'interprétation. We are still waiting for interpretation. And so my sincere apologies to those of you who require interpretation today. À ceux et celles qui ont besoin d'une interprétation, je suis sincèrement désolée. So we are bringing in two other speakers. Nous avons deux autres conférenciers. I will do my best to do a translation on the fly, an interpretation on the fly. Alors, j'essaierai de mon mieux de faire une interprétation juste tout de suite comme ça. Alors, les prochaines conférencières seront Erica Ward et Shaylynn Ward. So Erica Ward and Shaylynn Ward are joining us from the community of Natawaganeg. The Natawaganeg Community Food Center is the only food center in New Brunswick. And so first I'll introduce Erica Ward, who I met quite some time ago, as she was entering into work at the Nottawaganeg Community Food Center. Erica has been going through a food journey of her own over a number of years and currently is consulting with the food center on a new program called Mind Your Food. And so we're welcoming Erica today while she's still, in fact, on her mat leave. And so, Erica, we really appreciate you coming into the food center and being willing to share. I've just forgotten, I haven't said any of this in French. Alors, Erica Ward, ça fait longtemps qu'elle travaille déjà en alimentation dans la communauté de Nouveau-Brunswick. Elle travaille comme consultant avec le Centre communautaire en alimentation de Nouveau-Brunswick. Et puis, elle travaille maintenant comme consultant sur un nouveau programme qui est nommé Mind Your Food. So Erica, I'll welcome you first to share an introduction about the food center itself.
Hi, everyone. Can you just give me a thumbs up if you can hear us okay? Okay, perfect. So thanks to Jill for inviting us to speak today about the Nouveau-Brunswick Community Food Center. We also call ourselves the Nouveau-Brunswick Bistumune Gemk. So maybe I'll just touch on what that means. Nouveau-Brunswick is eel ground, and Bistumune Gemk is a Mi'kmaq word for the place to get food, but just enough to share and feed your family. There's a couple of different translations that we've received from our elders, but that's kind of encompasses like it pretty much. So as Jill said, I've been away on maternity leave. I'll be returning back in January, but I thought I could help Shalyn and introduce our program and kind of touch on what they have been doing in the last year. So we're located in Eel Ground First Nation, and we're in a smaller community. I'm sure some of you are probably familiar with it. We have approximately 500 members in the community, and we service probably like the majority have been in our space at least, once or twice, or, we have very active participants. I would say like probably 50 participants every week that come to our space. Obviously, right now, we're not seeing those numbers because of COVID. However, programming has transitioned to a lot of virtual workshops. However, during the summer when some of the restrictions were lifted a little bit, they did have the opportunity to do a muskrat root harvesting workshop where there was 8 to 9 participants. So community members were invited to the food center and then transported into the woods surrounding us, where they were shown how to harvest muskrat root and all of the different uses for that traditional medicine. I believe some youth were also involved, as well as elders, and of course the guides and anybody else who had knowledge to share regarding that. They also facilitated fiddlehead picking. Fiddleheads have always been a huge food source for us at the food center. It's always well received. Everybody wants fiddleheads. And so each year what we try to do is harvest enough fiddleheads to send out the doors through our food bank. And then they're frozen, processed, and all this. But this time what they decided to do was invite community members to come out and facilitate a fiddlehead workshop. So I believe they processed everything here at the food center. Shaylyn may be able to speak a little bit more to this, but I believe it was incredibly well received. Like I said, a lot of participants of our programming, they're always asking for fiddleheads. So it's really nice to see. They've also did a strawberry harvesting workshop as well. And then participants were brought back to the food center where they participated in a cooking class. And they made, I believe it was strawberry shortcake, but instead of like the biscuit, they made loosgenigen, which is so delicious. I'm not sure if any of you have tried that instead, but I prefer loosgenigen over the biscuit. Also, they this year they did bass fishing. So in our river system, bass is so abundant and it's a really good food source. Some people weren't always familiar with bass. You know, people are more likely to be asking for salmon and such, but this year they 23 students came out, so from Nottawatineg School, and our program coordinator here, Jeff Leary, he took out 23 students where they participated in bass fishing. So they were given all the equipment to go out onto the river. It's not far from the school, so they got to walk down in a group. And then I'm not sure how much fish they got.
We didn't catch any.
Oh, they didn't catch any fish that day, but I guess the experience is, you know, the knowledge and the skills there. So maybe next time they'll have better luck. I'm surprised they didn't actually, because you can literally look down in the river and see so much bass. Also, they also did a salmon harvesting workshop, I guess. I'm not really quite sure of the exact title, but what this workshop was inviting community members to come out and participate in making, I believe it's gill nets.
Yeah.
This is okay. So this isn't my expertise, but community members were brought to the food center and all of the supplies were all laid out across our front lawn. I drove by a couple times and I could see an abundance of netting and things. So what they were doing is they were sewing salmon gill nets. And did they place them in the river?
Well, the Mind Your Food students were supposed to place them with Jeff, but because of like liability reasons and the tide wasn't working with us,
Okay.
we just kind of taught them how to lay it out and then how to put it back in the box.
Okay, did you guys catch that from Shaylyn? I'm sorry, she's right here onto the sidelines. But so yeah, they facilitated a net making workshop. So I guess it's quite a process to do that. And these nets, from what I've seen, are incredibly long and huge. So I think that skill set is incredible, where, you know, you can share those teachings with community members. They can go out into our river system and harvest their own salmon. And typically, you know, we share all that. Our food fisheries usually donates a few salmon. I think we got some this year as well. And one of our most successful programs has always been our drop-in meal program. So this is where we see, you know, so many participants coming to the center to enjoy a very, very delicious home-cooked meal by our Red Seal chef, Brian Matheson. And the food fisheries donates the salmon to the community or to the community food center. And typically what would happen is, you know, we have community members taking part in cooking classes alongside the chef, and, you know, passing those skills on is so important to us, and sharing all of those things. But what we were seeing in the past is like elders coming in and saying, no, this is how you do it, showing Brian how to prepare a salmon the traditional way. So that was also really, really encouraging to see. But yeah, I guess that's just kind of an overview of like how we've tried to continue programming here at the food center during COVID. Trying to facilitate these workshops virtually is probably the biggest challenge. They had also planned ice fishing, where community members would come out and they would fish eel, which is a traditional food in our community. But unfortunately, it did get canceled due to COVID. So we're hoping to continue all of these next year, hopefully without COVID and the restrictions. But these workshops, we wanted to incorporate more traditional workshops. You know, we always did cooking classes and things like that, but we really wanted to incorporate traditional medicines and harvesting and things like that. So it's really encouraging to me to see these happening at the food center, because, you know, it wasn't as consistent as it is right now, which is really, really great. And the number of participants that are taking part is really, I think, really great to see. So I'm gonna pass the mic off to Shaylynn Ward, and I'm gonna get Jill to introduce her, but she sort of grew up with the Food Center, and she's an original youth champion, which is another program that we've had. Yeah, so thank you. I'm gonna hand it off to Jill, and then I guess Shaylynn. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Erica. It's so wonderful to hear about all of these wonderful programs. And Shaylyn, we've only heard your voice. You've been off in the corner, and now here you are. So Erica shared with me about Shaylyn's, some of Shaylyn's story that as it comes to food and Natawak, I'm so sorry that I'm realizing I'm not saying Natawakaneg correctly, and I'm going to practice that, but that your food journey, it starts off in the school, and you become a youth champion, which is such, as Erica mentioned, it's a really great program that sort of sees youth for the power and the skills that they hold. And then from there, Shaylyn becomes a summer student over at the Community Food Center. And then she's so good that they hire her on as project manager for the Mind Your Food program. And so Shaylyn, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And please, I'll hand it right back over to you to share a little bit more about this program.
Okay, Kwe, ni Delusi Shaylyn, ni Glewa Nanwanek. Hello, I'm from Pilgrim First Nation, and my name is Shaylyn. So the Mind Your Food project is combining healthy food with mental health. What else? I don't really know to say. We're a pilot project, so we have currently 3 other food centers working with us. So there's Harmony Food Center and the one in Winnipeg.
Oh, I can't remember.
Well, there's one in Winnipeg and one in Toronto. Camille and Kathleen are the other Mind Your Food facilitators. We currently were online until COVID restrictions kind of lift. We do cooking classes, we take them out on the land and show them different things like rabbit snaring, and we took them kayaking. We taught them how to prepare normal meals that you would eat at home, but also like pretty advanced ones like chicken parm and things like that. Yeah, so we kind of just been doing cooking classes this year, but this coming session is we're going to have a lot of mental health contributed to it. So I have my friend Shelly Francis from the Malek mental wellness team. She's going to be doing some like sexual health and things like that with them. And then we have Maxine Ganesh. She is a social worker / therapist. She has a bunch of titles, but she does tapping, and we're going to teach them how to like meditate and things like that. And then I have my friend John Fletcher. He is going to come in and teach us about like his like web concept and how you have to have like a good web in case things ever happen that you can fall back on. And during all these concepts, we're also teaching them how to cook healthy meals so that they can focus on their mental health at the same time, right?
And we supply them with everything they need.
Yeah, we supply them with all the ingredients and equipment. We also like portion it out for them so that they don't like take 4 tablespoons of baking powder and throw it in their soup, which has happened. The youth love it. They love getting out and exploring. We're trying to get like a weekend retreat with them so that it's more of a intensive program and they can take more from it from leaving their normal environment. That's what we're doing soon, I guess.
Yeah,
I'm gonna try.
It got pushed back again.
But yeah, other than that, the Mind Your Food project is mainly led by youth at this point. So we ask the youth what they want to see, what they want to do, and then we kind of just toss it up in the air and see what we can catch, right?
A lot of the programs that we've done at the food center, the youth
Mhm.
are also like, they vocalize that these are the programs that they want to participate in. So this is actually like a lot of these ideas that we're doing with the community in general are actually ideas stemming from the youth and their feedback. So we've done group sessions with the youth asking, like Shaylyn said, what do you guys want to see? What do you guys want to learn? And how can we help you manage, you know, day-to-day emotions and things like that,
Yeah.
incorporating food. It's a really incredible project. It is a pilot project. So right now, as Shalyn said, we're in the first year of implementing the program, but you know, we're trying to find our way and get as much feedback from the youth as possible. But I just think it's so incredibly encouraging that some of the sessions that we've facilitated at the food center for the general public is actually, you know, sessions that the youth wanted to see. So it's really, really encouraging to us to see that they want to learn our traditional ways. And but it's a challenge with COVID. And I touched on that earlier with COVID. It is so incredibly challenging. You cannot teach, you know, a muskrat root workshop virtually. I mean, you can, but there's no, like, the substance of it is hands-on. So we're gonna try to incorporate it into the school, in Nottawakaneg school a little bit, and just, sorry, I'm off to the sidelines. I'm just we're kind of bouncing back and forth off each other, but yeah, so the ages were originally, the youth that participate in this program was originally 13 years old to 19 years old. But we want to kind of open that up to the younger groups as well, because we had so much success with our previous Youth Champions program, where we went as the age was, I believe, grade 6. So 11 years old is where we started working so closely with them. And we called them our Youth Champions because they were like pioneers in the food system in Eel Ground. Like, they were the ones that were encouraging, you know, their elders and their grandparents, their mothers, their fathers to eat healthy food, and to, you know, like, we have video clips of like kids saying, hey, this isn't bad, you try a piece of broccoli, I love it. And it was just kind of like those little small things that were making such a huge impact. So anytime we would have you know, events here at the food center, it was our Youth Champions that were serving our elders in their black chef coats, looking so like sophisticated and just really proud to be that voice in the community. So that's why we kind of went and decided to open the Mind Your Food project up to younger ages. Obviously, with the younger ages, we'll kind of, I guess, the different ages will participate in different workshops. Like
Adjust the
Shaylyn,
program.
yeah, just like Shaylyn discussed, there's going to be sexual health, mental health, all of those different things, but the different workshops will be according to the youth's age and
What's appropriate for
yeah,
them.
what's appropriate for the different ages. But so it's a 3-year project.
Yeah.
So right now we're in our pilot year, I guess. This is kind of laying out the framework for what is going to come in the next year. We're really hoping with COVID, you know, the restrictions we're hoping COVID will just go away so we can continue, you know, programming and work with the youth, because we know they want this project and they want to take part in it, but it's just with the restrictions, it's difficult to kind of get there. But anyway, I could keep going on and on as she keeps speaking. I'm like, oh yeah, we have this.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Shaylyn has anything else to offer about the Mind Your Food, or if anybody has any questions.
And you know, we're we'll hold, since you two are able to stick around until the end, we'll hold for questions until the end. I'm excited to share that finalement, nous avons de l'interprétation disponible. Alors, si vous l'avez besoin, vous pouvez cliquer le globe, le boule en bas de l'écran. If you need interpretation, please feel free to click the globe at the bottom of the screen, puis vous pouvez choisir la langue de votre choix. And I'll pause for a moment to allow for that. And then I would love to say thank you, Shaylyn. Thank you, Erica, so much for sharing these details so far. I'll tell you what, sometimes I also mix up the teaspoon and tablespoon on the baking soda. That's happened to me. So that's just wonderful to hear about all of the components of this pilot project. And it'll be really important or really great to hear about how that plays out over the next little bit. And so for the moment, we'll pause, we'll hold for questions. I would encourage anyone who has questions about this program to please put them in the chat so we can ask Erica and Shaylyn at the end of this session. And now I would like to move over to hand the floor over to Dr. Malek Batal. Dr. Batal is a professor at the University of Montreal's Faculty of Medicine, adjunct professor in the School of Public Health, and the director of the WHO Collaborating Center on Nutrition Changes and Development. Malek holds the Canada Research Chair in Nutrition and Health Inequalities and is a fellow of the Canadian Academy of Health Sciences. And so he conducts participatory research studying the links between environment and between food system health and population health in an effort to redress health inequities. And so we are so thrilled to have you here today, Dr. Batal. Thank you so much. The First Nations Food, Nutrition, and Environment Study is the largest, if I'm not mistaken, nutrition, food security, and food safety study conducted in Canada with First Nations. There were a number of First Nations in New Brunswick involved in this study. And just recently, I've been seeing updates on this work that there are new articles and decision-making tools to support the redressment of these health inequities. And so without further ado, I will hand the floor over to you, Dr. Batal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jill. And thank you also, Erica, Shaylyn, and Nicole for all these very interesting and inspiring examples that you gave us. Can you please confirm that you can see my slide okay?
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you. So I'm going to be presenting briefly about Fnfnes, the First Nations Food, Nutrition, and Environment Study. But first, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm working and living in unceded Indigenous territory, which is Montreal. I am a non-Indigenous researcher. I'm actually an immigrant to this land, but I strive to conduct respectful research with communities. I have no conflict of interests to declare. So what is Fnfnes? It is a study with different aspects. We looked at surface water quality, at the water inside the homes. We sampled traditional food for contaminants. We did some hair sampling for mercury, but I'm only focusing on the questionnaire, on the survey that we did, which has information on traditional food intake, on market food intake, and on food security. And I think that's what we were asked to provide. So, and I'll give you at the end some information on where to get the fuller information from our study. So it's a very large study. It is the largest ever to have been done with First Nations living on reserve across the land. And 93 First Nations participated and 6,500 participants. And I acknowledge their participated in this study from 2008, where we started in British Columbia, to 2016, where we ended with Quebec and Labrador. In the Atlantic region, it was in 2014 that we did the study, including in New Brunswick, but also the other maritime provinces. And these are in front of you, the different communities that participated in our study. So who participated in the Atlantic? 1,025 adults. The Atlantic region was the region where the study happened in the most smooth way, in the smoothest way possible. People were very interested. They participated to the rate of 90% participation rate, which is very, very high for any survey. And you'll see in the pie chart a bit of the composition of the households, which mimics more or less that of the population in general. So we can report a bit on health and lifestyle. 20% of people reported having diabetes. So this is a question, were you diagnosed with diabetes? And this is high compared to the general Canadian population, which is around 8%. 52% smoke, which is also quite high compared to 13% in the general Canadian population. 40% are physically active, and 30% said that their health was very good or excellent. Now, when it comes to overweight and obesity, 48% of people were either measured or declared that they were obese. Plus, if you add that to overweight, you end up with only 21% of people having a healthy weight. What about food security? So here I'm not just putting the information from Atlantic Canada, but also from the rest of the country. And you'll see that Atlantic Canada is doing relatively well at 39%. However, that's still much, much higher than the general Canadian population at 12.2%. So we have incidences like with Alberta, where food insecurity is at 60%. And in the rest, in Canada, and the general Canadian population is at 12%. I have to repeat that. So we have pretty much 4 times higher food insecurity among First Nations living on reserve than in the general Canadian population. And when we look on the right-hand graph, if you look at households with and households without children, so in purple it is households with children, and in blue the households without the children, and you look at on your right is the Atlantic region. So 44% food insecurity in those households with children versus 33%. So having a child is a risk factor for the household to be food insecure, even if in general the children are protected from food insecurity by their parents. But this just shows how inequitable the question of food security is between First Nations and Canadians across the country. And we looked at the Canada National Nutritious Food Basket as a way to understand food insecurity. And while it makes sense in certain regions, because the food basket is much more expensive, let's say in Saskatchewan or in Alberta, in certain communities that are remote and that can only be accessed by plane. In the Atlantic region, that was not the case. All communities that participated had a road, and the prices were not very much higher. Like you can see in green is the maximum cost of one community. So it's the community with the highest cost for a basket of food for a family of 4. And compared to Halifax, there's a difference, but it's a small difference. As compared to, let's say, Ontario, where the community with the highest cost was 411, and the major urban center in that case was Ottawa, was $205. So it's more than double. It is not the case in the Atlantic region. So there is something else that should be explaining food insecurity, and it's basically income and access to food. Food security is not only about food that you purchase. So we also looked at traditional food harvesting and gardening. So 62% of households participated in traditional food harvest and gathering practices. 83% of the adults reported eating traditional food. That's high. People are still consuming traditional food and they like it. 60% of adults said that they would like more traditional food in their diet. However, many mentioned barriers, that being lack of time, the absence of a harvester, knowledge. So I'm very happy to hear about programs that try to teach younger generations on how to hunt, fish, or even process the traditional food. Lack of equipment and or transportation, and also external barriers, availability, climate change was mentioned, regulations, development and industry such as forestry, mining, roadways, oil and gas, hydro, etc. In the Atlantic region, the top traditional food consumed were moose, blueberry, and lobster. I don't think you guys are surprised, perhaps. And here we did a bit of an exercise where we looked at the 24-hour recalls, which are basically what people ate the previous day. And we put all of those recalls where traditional food was consumed versus all the recalls where no traditional food was consumed. And when traditional food is consumed, even if it is consumed in small quantities, we have more protein, we have less fat, we have less carbohydrates, we have more iron, zinc, magnesium, copper, potassium, etc. Meaning that traditional food is much better for you. It improves diet quality almost immediately. So this is just to say, to explain how people with more traditional food. So in the Atlantic region, that's the bottom bar, 60% would like more traditional food. And when we asked them, did you run out? 27% said that they ran out of traditional food in the Atlantic, and 24% would like more. You'll see that in BC, where they consume even more traditional food, they would like to have even more traditional food than was the case in Alberta. So what's the conclusion? I didn't show everything here, but you have to trust me with conclusions, but obviously you can go and look at the full reports. But the diet of First Nations adults in the Atlantic region does not meet nutrition recommendations. So that's when we look at what is consumed in general, when we look at amounts of fat, saturated fat, and salt in particular. These are high, even though I didn't show them here, but they are. Overweight and obesity, smoking, and diabetes are major public health issues. So is household food insecurity, which is much higher than in the general Canadian population. Food sovereignty over traditional food is compromised. So communities don't necessarily always have the access they desire to have or the control that they would like to have over traditional food. Water quality was good, but monitoring is always needed because that can change. And also, I didn't put it here, but in terms of contaminants, the picture was good. Most traditional foods were okay for consumption. So when we compare that with their quality from a nutritional perspective and their importance from a cultural perspective, I think we should definitely increase consumption of traditional food. So these are the different documents that you can find on our website, fnfnes.ca. The latest document that we came up with was the key findings and recommendations for decision makers. And that's a recommendation that was done by, these were collected through a forum that the Assembly of First Nations organized in late 2019, just before COVID hit. And so it's basically not our words, it's what people from different communities across the country wanted decision makers to hear. And that's a couple of points from those recommendations that we released in October. The importance of supporting initiatives that promote Indigenous rights, sovereignty, self-determination, values, and culture, prioritizing the protection of the environment, First Nations lands, waters, and territories, building capacity to eliminate barriers to proper nutrition and to reduce food insecurity, improving partnerships, supporting continuing research, and creating a joint task force or committee to plan how to implement or I always have a hard time with this word, operationaliser these recommendations. So that's it. Just a couple of words to say that as you saw, we know that there are gaps in knowledge on nutrition and health of children and youth, First Nations children and youth. And I showed you how households with children suffer more from food insecurity. So now we are working on FNCE, which is the Food, Environment, Health, and Nutrition of First Nations children and youth, a similar study that will last for the next 10 years. And we'll go we're starting in the Atlantic region. And we have contacted communities that have been randomly selected, and we will start our work there, and hopefully at the beginning of the new year. And I'll stop here. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing all of this incredible information. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what comes next with FNCE. I also like that. Sounds like fancy when we say that acronym. So looking forward to following that. I think now we'll open up to some questions. The end of this session is technically coming up in about a minute, but we're linking through to my closing, and I would rather hear or make space for questions for you folks. And so Alicia or our Q&A person, can I ask that you unmute to share any questions that may have come through the chat throughout Erica and Shaylyn's presentation or Dr. Batal's presentation?
Hey everybody, well, I'm not seeing any questions for either of them. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to unmute your mic or to add it in the chat box. But maybe just a quick thing to start. One thing that I found very interesting about both your projects was that for the wards, the cooking programs were really highly participated in. And then for Dr. Batal, the research was very highly participated in. So how do you two find getting engagement works? What are some techniques that you've used?
Okay, I guess I'll try to speak to that the best I can. I've been out for almost a year now, so I'm slowly stepping back into the manager's position. So as far as like engagement, did you say like cooking classes or like drop-in meals and food access? So I just like one program is like, I guess, food access, which is an incredible priority for us. So engagement has always been steady, I guess. And then as far as food skills, we try to create engagement during the food access programs, if that makes sense. So when we have folks coming in to pick up their food hampers, you know, we'll offer like, say they're going home with the moose roast and, you know, all of the fixings. We try to complement meals the best we can. So if we're sending somebody home with, you know, a moose roast, we'll try to complement potatoes, carrots, you know, kind of the fixings. And then during that time when they're picking up their hamper, we'll suggest, hey, we're having a virtual cooking class. This is the time. It's going to be, you know, on this page, or, you know, kind of give them all of the instructions that they need. And that is how we get a lot of engagement. And then also we'll do little draws during a virtual cooking class. Like say we're doing, I'm just going to keep using the same example. If we're doing a moose roast virtual cooking class and we've offered all of the ingredients in our food hamper that week, maybe we'll do a draw for a slow cooker during that virtual cooking class, or, you know, a chef knife, or, you know, something to complement that program. And sharing the video as well, like we'll get you an extra entry. There's just little small things like that. Like in our community, the best way to get, engagement and stuff like that is like a contest, I guess. It's, so we kind of just work, I guess, like we just kind of do what works best for us. But yeah, so as far as like food access, it's, it's such a priority in the community. We actually have data from the study that Dr. I can't remember your last name, I'm so sorry, Batal was talking about. We have, scientific data stating that 40% of our community is food insecure, and then 13% is severely food insecure. So he can correct me on these statistics, but that means that like 13% of our community members don't know where the next 4 meals are coming from, I believe. And then the 40% don't know where their next 2 meals are coming from. I could be wrong on those statistics, but it's just, that's how it's measured. Like this member doesn't know where their next number of meals are coming from. So in comparison to moderately food insecure and then severely food insecure. So those data points are really useful in, as far as like ordering and just making sure that we have sufficient food access in the food center. Yeah, I don't try to answer your question the best I can, but.
Oh, that's great, Erica. I think that reminds me of like meeting people where they are too, that sort of sense of the term is like seeing people and being able to meet them, not just where they are personally in their own worlds, but actually meeting people where they are. Yeah. Yeah.
In our case, if I may, it was about working first with chief and council, making sure that everything was useful for the community, hearing the community out in terms of whether they wanted to add questions to the questionnaire, or whether this is what they had in mind, having information on, and also finding those champions within the community who become part of our team. So these are interviewers, people who are from the community and who go out and do the work in the community. So they're well connected, they're enthusiastic, they are interested in the work, they're interested in traditional food and in the environment, and this is what makes the difference. And so we got lucky in the Atlantic region, and we found a lot of these champions as part of our team.
That's wonderful. And yeah, it's sort of, that's a key principle across this work, that participatory sense of the work, that it's so important to create something that is truly representative of what we're trying to tell the story of, or what we're trying to, how we're trying to impact communities. I'd like to offer Tanya James. Tanya, are you able to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, I am. My question is for Dr. Batal. So you said that you were focusing on the food insecurity piece today, but my apologies, I have not read your report. I did see that mercury and environmental contaminants was mentioned. Our first speaker of the morning brought up the fact that it is so much more difficult to safely access her traditional foods, mentioning pesticide spraying on blueberries. And I'm wondering if you saw a correlation between people who do eat a lot of country foods or wild foods and higher mercury or other contaminant levels.
Yes, so we saw that with mercury, and we saw it in certain communities, not all communities. And these were in northern Quebec and in some of the more northern communities in other regions, not the Atlantic region. So mercury is an issue for women of childbearing age because the standards are lower for that age group because of the possible impact on pregnancy, and might be an issue for very high consumers of certain carnivorous fish. So we found that for mercury. So it's localized depending on the region. And we found it also with lead. And lead has to do with the way the hunting is done. So it is not an environmental contaminant. It is contamination coming from the shots themselves. So if lead shots are used, then lead contamination is an issue. And there are programs to replace lead shots. They should not be used according to the regulations, but apparently hunters still use them because they perform better and they might be cheaper as well. But so, you know, there are ways to make sure that if it's big game, to get rid of the impact place. But if it's a smaller animal, if you're talking about geese or something like that, then it is really hard to get rid of the lead, and that is of concern.
And just to add another question, we in New Brunswick, we're in the middle of talking about glyphosate spraying. I hope I said that right. Glyphosate. Jill, help me out here.
Glyphosate.
Glyphosate.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Roundup,
because that has been in the news quite highly. Spraying power lines to keep down weeds. I'm wondering if there was any New Brunswick data specifically that you found concerning in terms of contaminants, or if we kind of tracked with the rest of the country.
Well, if you look at the regional reports, they are regional. So basically the Atlantic region is together. Individual communities can ask for their own data, but for all the published data, we have to anonymize the communities. So you cannot really tell whether the information is coming from New Brunswick or Nova Scotia in those cases. But if there's a concern and the community was part of the study, then the community themselves can ask for that information to be released to them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't see other questions in the chat, but one thing I thought was really interesting was the 60% number of communities looking for more traditional foods. And Erica, you have told some really interesting stories about introducing like moose meat, for instance, back into the menu. And I did want to comment that one of the notes earlier was, I think it was really great to hear that with Brian, he's a Red Seal chef. And I just wanted to say, Jerry Lasky said earlier, it's really nice to see that even a Red Seal chef can still learn something new. So from those elders that are correcting the ways of cooking or the traditional way. But I wanted to ask, what do you think is, it's challenging with that number to know, is it because there is more traditional food incorporated? Is that why the number is lower, do you think? Or is it, Erica, from your perspective and what you've seen in community, what would you say about that 60% stat?
So I think like access is a big point, just having access to traditional food. And there's a number of barriers, you know, financially, it costs money to go. You can't just pick up, you know, a shotgun or whatever weapon they use. I'm not quite sure, but you can't just go out and just shoot a moose, right? There's so many costs. And we broke that down. The acting manager did. So I'm going to try to, you know, piece together as much as I can, but they had 19 participants for the community moose hunt. And that was during, you know, COVID restrictions. So that number would have been incredibly higher if we didn't have to set a limit. I think the limit was 20 participants with a number of guides that took place. But I know the interest in that particular program was through the roof. And I'm not quite sure, like, I think, like I said, access is a big thing. And then having somebody in the family that has that knowledge to go and harvest whatever it may be, whatever that traditional food may be that, you know, the family wants. That was something that we've always seen here at the food center is people wanted access and they wanted, you know, to fill their freezers with moose meat or, you know, salmon, whatever it may be, but just the skill set to go and do that, or having somebody in the family that can go do that isn't there. So through these workshops that we've been facilitating this year, you know, we're sharing that knowledge to the best of our ability. And I think that number, like, I think that's so great that we have that statistic to say, like, you know, 60% want more traditional foods in the community. I think that's so encouraging. And the more people kind of know that number is higher, it's like, okay, I want to, you know, participate in that as well, because there's always some, at least that's what I've witnessed, was like hesitancy when it came to traditional food. You know, not necessarily like, no, I don't like it, or, you know, what have you, but it's just kind of the unknown. We didn't always have access to traditional food. My grandparents didn't always have access to traditional food. So it wasn't something that was in the household at all times. And it was kind of the unknown, right? And I think now we're reclaiming that young people want traditional food in their home and they want to know how to prepare it and harvest it. And yeah, I don't have an exact answer, but I just, you know, from observation here at the food center, I can tell you that when we first opened our doors here at the community food center, there was maybe 5 people that took moose meat from us. And today, we are giving moose meat to every single person that is accessing our food bank. So that kind of tells me something, you know, our Red Seal chef has prepared moose meat 100 million different ways for community members to try, you know, so I think that part also is like, okay, this is delicious and this is accessible. And, you know, now you know, it's just kind of opening more doors and just trying it out, right? There's been times where I've been here and, you know, a lot of the folks that come through our doors are family and friends, and, you know, they may have asked me, is there moose meat in this chili? And I have said no. And, you know, they may have had a bite, and, you know, as soon as they do, it's like, you know, this is like close family and friends. I'm not saying I said this to a lot of people, but, you know, I knew that they would enjoy it, and I knew they would, you know, want to, you know, I guess, yeah, it's just like the unknown and hesitancy, but yeah, so I guess that's kind of our journey with traditional, well, moose meat's a big one for us here. That's kind of, we go through about anywhere from like 10 to 12 moose in the winter season. So that offsets our food bank costs a lot, because we have hunters in the community who donate moose to us, and then we distribute it to elders and anybody who wants it. It's not, you know, there isn't like a process that we have, like you have to check all the boxes in order to access this food. It's literally for everybody. So creating access is a huge thing for us at the food center.
And access in many different ways, like you said, 100 million different recipes. Yeah. And then, you know, for you knowing that those folks won't be too mad at you for that white lie. Yeah. They are your family, so you know who you can do that with. Mm-hmm. Dr. Batal, did you want to add anything to that before we wrap up here for the day?
Well, I just wanted to say that perhaps numbers look lower for the Atlantic region in terms of people wanting more traditional food. It's just like a circle, perhaps, because traditional food is less available because a lot of the communities are near urban centers. So there's that too. There's not that remoteness that we can see in other places playing a role. So we have bigger communities, often closer to urban centers, so access to traditional food becomes more difficult. But programs like what Erica is talking about are great, because then you can bring the traditional food back to the community, and people are definitely interested. It's just a question of being used to it and it's crossing the generational barrier, I believe.
Yeah. Oh, Erica, were you going to add any final note to that? I thought you opened.
No, I was just.
Might have been mistaken.
Yeah, sorry.
So I wonder if the best way for us to close off today, I don't think that there are any more questions, and we're at 2 minutes after our time. So I appreciate everyone who's stuck around for this extra couple of minutes. I'd like to, for our last piece before we go and we reconvene tomorrow, I'd like to ask Dr. Batal, Erica, would you share with us what do you want to get loud about? And that is the title of this conference. So what do you want to share as your final word?
Well, if I may, I would like to share about the systemic barriers that are between First Nations and their preferred food, and between First Nations and food in general. Unfortunately, when we talk about food insecurity, that's a problem that is, it's time we took it seriously and we did something about it. And when I say we, it is governments that need to do that. Communities are doing a lot, and they're very resilient, and they're very strong, and they're having programs, as we could see. But it's you need some systemic changes. You need changes that come from people with the purse, with the money, and I think that would be what I would like to say out loud.
Thank you so much. And then final word, we'll go back over to Erica, back over to Shaylyn. You two get to finish up our day. What do you want to get loud about?
What do we want to get loud about in regards to food? I guess kind of related to our youth is to like empower youth, give them the strongest voice that they can possibly have, because what we've learned throughout the years, I guess, here at the Food Center is that they have so much knowledge, I guess, and like just giving them a platform to express what they want, because what we've seen here is that they want access to traditional teachings and traditional workshops and traditional foods. And I guess I just want to back them and give them the opportunity to flourish. And, I guess that's kind of what I want to get loud about. Do you have anything to offer, Shalyn?
Maybe like everything impacts our food. So whenever making decisions about climate change and whatnot, make sure you're thinking 7 generations ahead. Always think like, are these decisions going to impact our future? Are they gonna hurt our future, right? Like you want to make sure you're making the best decisions. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I don't know that we could have had a better way to end our first day here at this conference. So I want to thank all of our presenters, Erica, Shaylyn, Dr. Batal. We so appreciate having you here, and to our participants as well. Thank you so much for joining us on day 1. We will be back bright and early at 8:45 tomorrow morning with a session on food and climate change. And so until then, we've given you lots to think about, to get loud about. And so I hope that you all enjoy the rest of your day. Merci beaucoup, Willalin. Bye for now.
Bye.